Fellas, let's be real for a second. Every man in this room respects confidence, but let me tell you, men deeply respect women who live by a certain standard. Not because they're perfect, not because they're flawless, but because these women know exactly who they are and they don't apologize for it. Today, I'm going to give you 4 simple rules. And when a woman applies them, respect isn't just earned, it's automatic. When we talk about respect, it always starts in one place, first with you. Think about it. If you don't respect yourself, if you don't draw the line on what's acceptable and what's not, how is anyone else supposed to know where that line is? Self-respect isn't a fancy word. It's the tone you set before you ever open your mouth. It's the way you walk into a room. It's the way you carry yourself when no one's watching. Men pay attention to that. They might not even realize they're noticing it, but they are. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you invite someone into your home. They walk in, they kick their shoes off in the middle of the floor. They toss their jacket over your couch. They spill a drink on the counter and leave it. Now, if you say nothing, if you just smile and clean it up, what happens? They think that's the standard, that this is fine. And guess what they'll do the next time? The exact same thing. But the moment you say, hey, in my house, we take our shoes off at the door, or can you wipe that up real quick? You've set the tone. You've taught them how to treat your space. It's the same thing with your life. Your boundaries are the instruction manual for how people are supposed to treat you. And here's the truth. If you don't write that manual, someone else will, and they won't write it in your favor. Men respect women who make it clear, not in a harsh or cold way, but in a calm and firm way, that they value themselves enough to have limits. That's not being difficult. That's being clear, and clarity commands respect. Now, here's where people get it twisted. Some think setting boundaries means you've got to be loud, dramatic, or confrontational. That's not it at all. It's not about building walls. It's about building guardrails. Guardrails don't keep you locked in. They keep you safe and keep things on track. Boundaries are the same. They tell people, here's where the road is. Here's how to stay on it. And if you can't, you don't get to keep driving in my life. And let me be really honest with you. Men notice this instantly. A woman who respects herself doesn't have to announce it. She doesn't need a sign. It shows up in her energy, in her choices, in the way she says no without apology. There's a quiet power in that. When she chooses not to engage in nonsense, when she doesn't lower her standards just to keep the peace, when she knows that her value doesn't shrink just because someone else can't see it. That's when men sit up straighter. That's when the respect becomes deeper. But here's the flip side. If you don't respect yourself, you start tolerating behavior that chips away at your worth. You start excusing things that don't sit right with you. And every time you let it slide, every time you swallow that feeling in your gut that says, this isn't okay, you're teaching people that it is okay. And once you've trained them that way, it's a lot harder to untrain. Respect starts slipping, not because you aren't worthy of it, but because you didn't hold the line. So how do you actually live this out? You start small. You say no when you mean no, even if your voice shakes. You stop apologizing for existing, for having needs, for taking up space. You check yourself in the mirror and ask, am I setting the standard, or am I letting someone else set it for me? That's where the shift happens. And the beauty is once you start respecting yourself in the little things, it spills over into the bigger things. Men see it, they feel it, and they know instantly they're dealing with someone who values herself. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you model. And when you model self-respect, when you live it out day after day, you don't have to beg for it. You don't have to convince anyone to give it to you. It shows up naturally. Because people, especially men, will always mirror the level of respect you give yourself. That's why I say self-respect sets the tone, because if you don't set it, no one else will. Here's the thing about respect. It doesn't come from chasing it. It doesn't come from bending yourself into a shape you think someone else wants. It doesn't come from looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes, wondering if you measure up. Respect, real respect, comes from confidence, and confidence has nothing to do with being the loudest person in the room, or the one with the flashiest outfit, or the one who never doubts themselves. Confidence is about being steady. It's about knowing who you are, standing firm in it, and not needing the world to clap for you before you believe it. Let me break it down. Men don't deeply respect a woman because she's perfect. Nobody's perfect. They respect the woman who doesn't chase approval like it's oxygen, because approval is like quicksand. The more you reach for it, the deeper you sink. The harder you try to get everyone to like you, the more you lose yourself in the process. And people can feel that. A man can feel when a woman is putting on a mask, when she's adjusting herself to fit his comfort zone, when she's saying what she thinks he wants to hear instead of what's real. And the truth is, it doesn't earn respect. It actually chips away at it. Confidence, though, that's magnetic. It's not arrogance. It's not arrogance. It's not pride. It's the quiet assurance that says, I know who I am. I know what I bring, and I'm not going to shrink so someone else can feel tall. Men respect that because it communicates strength without a single word. It's the same way you can tell when someone walks in a room and owns their presence, not because they announce it, but because they don't need to. That energy speaks louder than anything they could say. And confidence is tested in the small moments. It's tested when you don't laugh at a joke that you don't think is funny just to fit in. It's tested when you say no to something you don't want, even if you know it might disappoint someone. It's tested when you stop over-explaining your choices to people who don't even have to live with them. Those little moments are the building blocks. Every time you choose confidence over approval, you strengthen the respect people feel for you. Here's another layer to this. When you chase approval, you hand your power away. You put your sense of worth in someone else's pocket. And that's dangerous because people are unpredictable. If your value depends on someone else's opinion, what happens when that opinion changes? What happens when they don't clap for you or when they criticize you? Suddenly, your confidence crumbles. But when your confidence is rooted in who you are, not in what someone else says, you can weather that storm. Their opinion might sting, sure, but it doesn't define you. And men respect that resilience. They respect the woman who can take a hit, stay grounded, and not let it rewrite her worth. Now, I'm not saying confidence means you never care about what anyone thinks. We're human. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. That's natural. But there's a difference between valuing connection and begging for validation. When you operate from confidence, you can care about people without depending on their approval. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the process. And that balance, that's what earns lasting respect. Men also notice the difference between a woman who's confident and a woman who's performing. Performance gets attention, sure, but it doesn't get respect. Authenticity does. A woman who says, this is me. I'm not perfect. I'm not here to prove anything, but I'm not going to compromise who I am. That's the kind of presence that stops a man in his tracks. That's the kind of woman he talks about when he says she's different. Not because she's trying harder than anyone else, but because she's not trying to be anyone else. And here's the truth. Confidence is a choice, not a feeling. If you wait until you feel confident, you'll be waiting forever. Confidence is built by action, by choosing to trust yourself in the moment, even when you're nervous, by choosing to speak up, even when your voice shakes, by choosing to stay true to your values, even when it would be easier to go along with the crowd. That's what creates the kind of confidence that commands respect without demanding it. Men deeply respect women who live this way because it's rare, because it's strong, because it shows them they're dealing with someone who doesn't need their validation. And ironically, that's exactly what makes them want to give it. Confidence over approval. That's where real respect begins. One of the biggest reasons respect grows or dies in a relationship is communication. Not the kind where you talk just to fill the silence, but the kind where you're clear, steady, and direct. Men don't respect confusion. They don't respect mixed signals or the game playing or the constant guessing of what you mean. What they do respect, deeply respect, is when a woman knows how to speak her mind in a way that's calm, firm, and clear. Think about it this way. Clarity builds trust, and trust is the foundation of respect. If you say one thing today and another thing tomorrow, if you sugarcoat how you feel just to avoid conflict, what you're really doing is creating fog. And fog always makes people uncertain. Nobody trusts what they can't see through. But when you communicate directly, when you can look a man in the eye and say, this is how I feel, this is what I need, and this is where I stand, that cuts through the fog. It creates safety. And with safety comes respect. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but if I'm too direct, won't I come across as harsh? Not if you're calm, not if you're steady. There's a big difference between being loud and being clear. Loudness pushes people away. Clarity draws them in. A calm voice, firm words, and no apologies for speaking them. That combination is powerful. Men respect it because they can finally relax. They don't have to decode what you're really saying. They don't have to guess if you mean yes or no. They don't have to play mind games. And that freedom, that straightforwardness is something men will never admit they crave, but they absolutely do. Here's a story to illustrate it. Imagine you're at a restaurant. The server gets your order wrong. Some people will smile and eat it anyway, even though it's not what they wanted. Others will complain under their breath, maybe even fume about it later, but never actually say anything. Then there's the person who calmly says, "Excuse me, this isn't what I ordered. Could you please bring the right one?" No yelling, no drama, just direct communication. Guess who gets respected in that moment? Not the one who stayed silent and accepted something they didn't want. Not the one who got emotional and made a scene. The one who was clear, respectful, and firm. That's exactly how it works in relationships too. Men don't respect endless guessing games. They respect knowing exactly where you stand. And even if they don't always like what you have to say, they'll respect the honesty behind it. Because honesty is what creates trust, and trust is what creates respect. Without that, everything else falls apart. The other side of this is that unclear communication often comes from fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being too much. But here's the hard truth. Avoiding those fears doesn't save you. It costs you. It costs you respect. Because when you hide what you feel or soften what you need just to keep the peace, you may avoid a fight in the moment. But long term, you're teaching people not to take you seriously. And once that pattern sets in, it's hard to undo. So how do you build this kind of communication? Start with honesty, even in the little things. Say what you mean, not what you think will please. Use fewer words, not more. Over-explaining often dilutes your message. And practice staying calm when you speak, because calm doesn't mean weak. Calm means in control. Calm means, I know what I'm saying, I trust it, and I don't need to yell to prove it. That energy commands respect. And let me tell you, men notice it fast. When you can communicate directly, it changes the whole dynamic. A man doesn't have to wonder if you're upset or if you mean what you say or if you're silently holding something in. He knows where you stand, and that gives him the chance to rise to it. That kind of communication elevates the relationship because it eliminates the games, and what's left is respect. At the end of the day, clear communication isn't about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about making sure your voice is steady and your boundaries are understood. It's about building trust that lasts. And when a woman can do that, when she can speak with calm, firm clarity, men don't just listen. They respect her. Respect doesn't come from words alone. It comes from consistency. You can say all the right things. You can promise all the right values. But if your actions don't line up with what you say, the respect won't last. Consistency is what makes your words believable. It's what turns intention into credibility. And credibility is the backbone of respect. Think about it. We've all known someone who talks a big game. They say they're dependable. They say they're honest. They say they value loyalty. But when it comes down to it, they don't show up when they said they would. They shift their story when it gets uncomfortable. They bend their values when it's convenient. And every time that happens, respect slips away a little bit more. You stop trusting their word. You stop taking them seriously, because the truth is inconsistency is where respect dies. Now, flip that around. When someone says they'll do something and then they actually do it every single time, it changes the way you see them. You trust them. You lean on them. Their word holds weight. And that's exactly how men feel when they're around a woman who lives with consistency. She doesn't just talk about her standards. She lives by them. She doesn't just say what she believes. Her choices reflect it. She doesn't shift her values depending on who's in the room. That kind of steadiness earns deep respect because it proves she's grounded, not just performing. Here's why consistency matters so much. It removes doubt. Doubt is what kills trust. If you're unpredictable in how you show up, people are always second guessing. Will she mean what she says this time? Will she follow through, or will this be another empty promise? That guessing game erodes respect. But when you're steady, when people know that what you say is what you mean, and what you mean is what you'll do, you build trust without even having to ask for it. And let me be real, consistency isn't about being perfect. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about alignment. When you mess up, you own it. When you say yes, you follow through. When you say no, you don't waver later. That kind of alignment is rare, and men respect it because it shows strength. It shows discipline. It shows that you live by principle, not by impulse. Think of it like this. If you've got a friend who cancels plans on you half the time, eventually you stop relying on them. You might still like them, but you don't count on them. Contrast that with a friend who shows up every time they say they will. When they tell you something, you don't even doubt it. You know they'll follow through. That's the difference consistency makes. And in relationships, that difference is everything. Now, here's the subtle part. Men don't just respect consistency in what you do. They respect consistency in who you are. If you're confident one day, but crumble the next, if you set boundaries, but then let them slide the moment it's uncomfortable, the message gets mixed. But when you're steady, when your confidence isn't conditional, when your boundaries don't bend depending on the situation, that's when men know you're someone to take seriously. Consistency in character is what gives your words weight. It's easy to declare your values when it costs you nothing. The real test is whether you hold them when it's hard. And that's where consistency shines, because anyone can say, I deserve respect, but living like you deserve it day in and day out, even when it's inconvenient, that's what separates the ones who command respect from the ones who just ask for it. So if you want to build respect that lasts, don't just say what you stand for, show it again and again, even in the small things, especially in the small things, because those little consistencies add up. They form a pattern, and people don't respect intentions. They respect patterns. Consistency equals credibility, and credibility is what makes respect stick. There's a unique kind of respect that comes when someone can carry both strength and kindness at the same time. It's not about being hard, and it's not about being soft. It's about balance. A woman who can be gracious, compassionate, and kind while at the same time refusing to tolerate disrespect earns a deeper level of respect than either extreme ever could. Because grace without boundaries gets taken advantage of, and boundaries without grace turn cold. But when the two work together, it creates a presence that commands respect without ever needing to demand it. Here's the reality. Men notice how you respond when you're treated well, but they pay even closer attention to how you respond when you're not. Anyone can be nice when things are easy. Anyone can smile when they're being admired or complimented. But when someone pushes past your boundary, when they speak to you in a way that's demeaning, or when their actions show disregard, that's the moment where true respect is built or lost. If you shrink back and accept it, if you laugh it off to avoid conflict, respect erodes. But if you calmly, firmly stand your ground without losing your composure, that's when respect grows. The mistake a lot of people make is thinking they have to choose between being kind or being strong. But the truth is, you can be both. Think of it like this. Grace is how you hold yourself, and boundaries are how you protect yourself. If you only have grace, you end up excusing behavior that chips away at your worth. If you only have boundaries, you come off rigid and unapproachable. But when you carry both, you communicate something powerful. I value myself, and I value others too. I'll treat you with respect, but I expect it in return. And this balance isn't just something you talk about. It's something you live. For example, maybe someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Instead of snapping or staying silent, you calmly say, I wasn't finished. Let me complete my thought. That's grace with a boundary. Or when someone disrespects your time, showing up late without consideration, you don't explode, and you don't brush it off either. You simply say, my time matters, and I need you to respect that. Again, calm, clear, and firm. That balance is what shifts the dynamic. What men respect is not the anger or the silence. It's the poise. It's the ability to stay centered even in the face of disrespect. Because anyone can blow up and anyone can go quiet, but it takes strength to hold your ground with composure. That's where the respect is earned. And believe me, men notice. They might not always say it out loud, but internally, they recognize that strength and they respect it. There's also something deeply attractive about grace under pressure. When a woman can remain kind but unshaken, when she doesn't let someone else's poor behavior pull her out of her character, it signals emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is rare. It shows that she's not reactive. She's intentional. She doesn't let the outside world dictate her value. That steadiness is what commands lasting respect. Now, let's be clear. Grace doesn't mean tolerance for disrespect. Sometimes people confuse kindness with passivity. They think that being nice means letting things slide. But true grace actually draws a sharper line because it communicates, I can be respectful to you, but I will not allow you to cross this boundary. That paradox is what makes it powerful. A woman who can smile, remain calm, and still walk away the moment someone crosses her line sends one of the strongest messages possible. She values herself too much to stay where she's not respected. And men see that. They feel it. They can't help but respect it. It comes down to this: grace shows your character and boundaries show your strength. Put them together and you've got a balance that no one can ignore. A woman who can be kind